So welcome to the night hacking event here at DevNexus 2017 here in Atlanta, Georgia. Got as my guest Derek Ashmore. Derek, thanks for coming by the booth.
Thank you.
On the stage here. So you come all the way from Chicago. How's Atlanta treating you?
Atlanta feels very warm. I like the weather here.
All right.
Definitely very nice.
Okay. So you're going to be presenting very shortly. And as we were just discussing before we came on camera, you got an overlap of like three very interesting areas which are hot,
Yes.
or cool, or however you want to look at it. So you got cloud, you got microservices, and you got DevOps. And trying to implement any of those is kind of challenging on its own. How on earth do you bring all of those together in one place?
That's an interesting question. Scope was definitely a battle for us in putting the presentation together. But I think there's a need for it. There is, first of all, let's take these buzzwords. You could look at them, some people look at them as fads. I don't believe they're fads. I believe they'll always stay around in some way, shape, or form. They may mutate a little bit, they may get enhanced, they may get added to. But I think those concepts are here to stay. And the reason primarily, just to preview my talk a little bit, is because the money's behind it. In terms of firms wanting speed to market, in terms of cost effectiveness, not wanting to pay for idle. I think these concepts are here to stay. And I also think that there's a lot of material on these topics individually, right? And you're right, they're very hard to implement on their own. But together it just amplifies the difficulty, because the amount that developers need to know just exponentiates. And that's where we're trying to lay down patterns. I believe in the concept of patterns. And so one of the things that we've done is we've put together it's a hands-on session. All right, so we've put together a application that marries basic elements of all these three concepts.
Got it.
And people can follow along on their own laptops and do it with us. And it doesn't have the depth that people are going to need eventually, but it gets them started.
Okay. So without stealing the thunder from your presentation, I'm just kind of curious, like, just take, for example, let's take DevOps. Obviously, a lot of momentum behind it. We've got a lot of tools that allow you to kind of take that methodology and put it into play. But it's also a cultural shift, right?
It is.
So how, I mean, and people, if you just look at human behavior, it's hard to change. So what are your thoughts going into something like this? So when you got this confluence of, overlapping Venn diagrams, for lack of a better word, I mean, how do you overlap that with human behavior?
Essentially, that's a very insightful point. I'm finding that all over the place. People try to do DevOps, but they try not to change or grow their processes around how they get code from development to production. And that's a failure. If you think about a business process that, say, you check code in, you get it through testing, you get it approved for production, you get it into production, the process that we've been using, which is highly manual to do this, works very well for, like, say, a dozen applications or 24 applications, something that's comparatively small. Amplify that by 10x, right, where you have 250 to 1,000 microservices that you need to deploy. And you want to do continuous delivery, so you get speed to market, so new features get to production faster. You just can't do that with the old bureaucratic process in place. So the companies that are most successful at this have the insight to basically realize this, scrap their current business process, and build it again from the ground up.
And who I know we've got kind of some more of the well-known examples of Etsy and Netflix and companies like that. But who, in your mind, do you see as the ones who are really successful at deploying this?
I've got a friend who until very recently worked at OpenTable, and they were very successful at this. Essentially, and this is the paradigm shift that gets corporations, that makes them nervous. Essentially, what they did to enable all of this is they put continuous delivery in place, and they effectively removed manual approvals for anything except with a direct financial impact.
Oh, wow. Okay.
All right? And what they did is they supplanted that with all sorts of automated testing, so they could tell if something got out there that wasn't working correctly and very quickly back it out.
Wow, excellent.
So in other words, instead of putting the guards on the front end and making them manual, you make the guards automatic, and you make that so that you can detect errors very, very quickly and very early. The other thing you can do is what's called canary releases. Comes from what miners used to do. In essence, essentially, you direct maybe 1 or 2% of your load to a new version in production, and if it works fine, then you roll it out the rest of the way. If it doesn't, you minimize the negative impact on your customer base.
So do you think, like, with both with microservices, with cloud, and with, obviously it's going to be a transition. You're going to have the early adopters who kind of take it on and they're kind of leading the charge. Do you kind of see this to be something that will, in some kind of a time frame, everyone will kind of move over, or do you see kind of being a hybrid world where we'll have kind of the old and the new, and they'll kind of coexist for many years to come?
Interesting question. There is, of course, going to be a hybrid world as people transition. There's no avoiding that. I think eventually the overwhelming large majority will be doing DevOps and cloud. And I think the reason behind that is money-based and competition-based. From a competitive standpoint, there's really no other way that we've found to get new features to market more quickly. And from a business owner's perspective, if your competition's moving faster than you are, that's not a good thing. You'll be dead. You'll either move to or you'll be dead. One of the two, right? So I don't think it'll ever get to 100%. That transition will taper off. But I think by and large, you're going to see people going to these methodologies simply because from a business perspective, there's no other choice.
Okay.
And I realize that answer isn't what most geeks like to hear. They like to hear technical kinds of reasons. But to me, it's all business.
Got it. Okay. Well, I know you got a presentation to go to, so thank you, Derek, so much for coming by.
Thank you, Jared.
And the big takeaway I got is follow the money.
Yes.
And follow Derek Ashmore at his presentation. Okay.
Thank
take
you,
care.
Jared.
Thank
Take
you.
care.